Hi everyone, good morning, welcome or welcome back to the Debate Club. So, this is an open discussion forum that we have built and refined over the years so that we could improve the public discourse that we have going on in India and the overall quality of it. And the topic for this week is caste cannot be annihilated from Indian society. Agree or disagree? Before I open the floor for debate, I'd like to give you guys some context on the same. So, this debate is inspired by the work of B.R. Ambedkar, who argued nearly a century ago that caste was not simply a social problem, but a system embedded in everyday life through marriage, status, religion, and power. His famous question was not whether caste could be reformed, but whether it could truly be destroyed. Independent India responded with some of the most world's ambitious anti discrimination measures. Untouchability was abolished, reservations were introduced, and constitutional protections were created. Yet, caste remains deeply visible in politics, marriage, social identity, economic opportunity, and public discourse. What makes this debate difficult is that both sides can point to real evidence. On one hand, India has seen unprecedented social mobility, greater representation of historically marginalized communities, urban mixing, and also, to some extent, legal protection against caste discrimination. Many practices that once were openly accepted are now socially as well as legally unaccepted inside the same country. On the other hand, caste continues to influence who people marry, where they live, how they vote, and sometimes even their access to opportunity. Atrocities, discrimination claims, and caste based political mobilization remain part of contemporary India. The deeper question is not whether caste exists today. It clearly does, right? The question is whether caste is a permanent feature of Indian society capable only of changing form, or whether it can eventually disappear in the same way other permanent social hierarchies have faded throughout history, right? And what I want you as participants to think about is what annihilation actually means. Does caste end when discrimination ends? When caste no longer affects life outcomes? When intercaste marriages become common? Or when caste identity itself becomes irrelevant? Ultimately, the question this debate is asking is whether caste is a social institution that can be dismantled or a human reality that continually reinvents itself. So, with that context in place, I now declare the floor open for debate. Participants who want to speak can use the reaction button to raise their hands. And please note that there will be a rebuttal session roughly 1 hour down the line where you can counter people's points. For now, it will be opening statements and context building. So, if you have something that you want to counter later on in the session, please have a notepad and pen handy so you can directly counter the point and address the person in the rebuttal session. Thank you. Anybody who wishes to speak now may use the reaction button to raise the hand. I see Anant raising his hand. Yes, please.
Yeah, good morning, all. I was just curious that why caste has been chosen as the topic because this is a very interesting topic and this is a very wide topic which we have a lot of things to discuss. So let me sort it up like point wise. First of all, in India right now, if there isn't an existence of other religion, like a multiple options of religion, in India, it would have been a caste system. It wouldn't be, we'll be saying like we are from multiple religion. Instead, we will be considering ourselves from multiple caste. And second point, we all know the political parties are making use of this caste and religion as they are one of the factor in order to get vote for their vote bank. Second thing, the politics which we are having in India right now, we know how much they are making use of the religion and the caste system which they are exploiting it in order to get the votes. Third thing, We know, since you mentioned about Mr. Dr. Ambedkar, he converted himself to Buddhism just because there is no kind of subcategory caste in that religion. So that's the only reason which Dr. Ambedkar wanted himself to be a part of the Buddhism, as well as he wanted others to be part of the Buddhism too, because there isn't a subcaste system in the religion of Buddhism. While we consider in the other religion like Hinduism or Islamism or Christianity, there are multiple subcategories, but in Buddhism that doesn't exist. That is one of the better thing about Buddhism. Third thing, whether caste is a good thing or not. Well, we have multiple backwarded caste. For example, if we are considering about the SC, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, if we are taking away their right to be considered to if we are not considering them with the caste system, they won't be, they will be always the suppressed kind of category in the society, because we still know the tribal students are yet to have the right to education, even though that is the reality. But we, being India, being the first 10 superpower nations, but still the situation in India is the worst. We all need to accept that, and we all know it already. But because of the capitalism, people say that we have the highest GDP and other stuff, but still the reality, coming to the root of India, people are suffering, especially the tribals, the scheduled caste. All these people are suffering. If we are taking away this caste system, it will affect them also. But there are people who are exploiting it. I am sure of that. But if we are taking away the system, wouldn't it affect the upbuilding of the backwarded caste like tribals or like other scheduled caste? Where, yeah, those are some of the privilege which they require even right now, because they are still suppressed by the society. They are still suppressed by the major, the rich category of the people. They are yet they are not having the enough food. They are not having enough education. They are not even being considered. So if you're taking away this caste system, wouldn't that affect them? So if we are actually trying to take away this, how will we consider them? That's one of the question I want to ask all of you. At the same time, casteism do make a separation within the society. Sorry.
Um, Smriti Ranjan, you can speak later on. If this is a mistake, I'll just be muting you for now. You can continue, Anant.
Yeah, see, I was just trying to ask the question that caste is, when we consider of taking away caste system, we do need to have a solution, a remedy for the people who are actually still in the backward caste, or the tribal peoples who are yet to be uplifted by the society, and people who are suffering even in this new generation or this new era of technological, the superpower nation being considered as in India, still the people are suffering, not even the right to education. So these such society, in this society, such people are still existing. So if we take away their right, their right to be considered, what will they do if we are doing it? At the same time, there is actually a problem with the separation, or the feeling that this casteism do make a build up the mindset of that, okay, they are having some kind of special privilege, and we do have to take away from that. We need to consider everyone as equal also. So there are multiple problems at the same time to be fixed. So there should be a proper solution for this. At the same time, we cannot take it all of it, take it away all of a sudden. So that's
Right.
what I'm trying to say. There
So
are
what
the
the opportunity
cons and pros are there.
was, it is possible to, eliminate caste system from the Indian society, but how will it affect the people who are instead of the backward classes or of the oppressed minorities. I think that's what you're trying to say in summary, right?
Yeah, kind of. Your voice was feeble, but yeah.
Right. So, thank you, Anand. Next up, I see iPhone raising his hand. So you can go ahead. And guys, please remember to keep your eye on the time. Hi, if you're trying to speak, you're inaudible. Try rejoining or unmuting yourself after you mute it. Until then, I let Bharat go ahead.
Sure. Can you folks hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Good morning, folks, first of all. So caste, yeah, I think Anand started it very well. Caste is a very tricky problem indeed. It's when I think with the Rose's introduction, caste is definitely very unique when it comes to separation. When you compare it with any other racial or religious separations, there are problems all over the world. Caste is much more unique than that. So we need to kind of take a unique structure. So based on my readings, right, this is my understanding of how caste has been there all along and how caste movements happened. So to answer Anand's question, caste being used as a social and political unit definitely had its advantages in the past and even today, right? So the first thing that let's say a lower caste would do is particularly organize themselves within that particular class. It's not even within SC, right? SC is a movement that happened even a bit later, but even before that it was even OBC caste, a particular caste, even maybe a coalition of all the subcaste under that caste joining together and forming a political unit and asking for their rights, right? This is how caste was first initially used. Now the problem with this is, right, even though the benefits are you get a political strength for you to ask your rights, for example reservations and things like that, but at the same time this does create a separation in the society. So that is what has transformed into caste vote banks of today, where you could see that, let's say you go to a village, you want to put a MLA candidate there, you would obviously put it, it's just politically advantageous, right? You always obviously put it within from someone whom from a higher caste or at least the majority population caste, right? And the reason for it is that's how you win elections, right? Because at least in villages and rural areas people still vote within the caste, and I like to understand why that is, right? Why that is happening. So caste, if you think about it in a particular way, caste feeling is kind of very human nature, because everybody in your caste is closely blood related to you than everybody else, right? That's at least in most places that's the case, right? And that's what people are fed to believe as well, but it is true in most of the cases as well. So when it is like that, it's like a bubble, like you would have heard about social media bubbles. Similarly, you would live in a caste bubble, right? And within the caste bubble, whatever political opinions that your family and your relatives and your distant relatives will tell will propagate more. So even affiliation to a party will come from your caste bubbles, right? And this is going to be problematic because politically, yes, it's a good tool to get your representation, but at the same time, in a democracy, when we are divided into units of caste like this, we are going to go nowhere, right? You put a MLA of one caste, the other caste will get angry, and they will probably try to interrupt whatever progress they are going to bring, and this problem needs to be solved, right? So that's where while we you do use, so that we are going to live in a at least we are in the period I feel of duopoly, right? Like we are going to be using caste as a social political unit. At the same time, we need something to build horizontal solidarity, right? And this also have been attempted in the past. And one example is the Dravidian movement, right? The attempt of Dravidian movement was to use language as a way to build horizontal solidarity, overlapping caste. But even that, when it meant political, right, when it went political, it faced the same problem, right? You can't just say, hey, this is a Tamilian, so vote thinking it's a Tamilian. That's not going to work in rural areas, and that's the reality. And politically they had to face the same issues, and they had to use the same caste based candidates to be put up forward. So I think the problem that we are in is that we do need, maybe I'll finish, take 10, 20 more seconds. We do need caste as a political unit for progress, but the political units that come out of it should not be about safeguarding the caste, or being against intercaste marriages. Instead, it should be about uplifting the caste. At the same time, it should be about mingling with other caste people and building the horizontal solidarity among people, which is much more important in the long run. And that is where I see we can solve the caste problem. Sorry, I am done. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bharat. iPhone, do you want to try speaking? I see your hand is raised. You can unmute and try to speak. All right. Looks like he's not available at the moment. So, to add a little bit of nuance to the session, I think for this topic, the answer, whether or not it can be completely annihilated, really depends on what we mean by the term caste, right? If we are denoting things like hierarchy, discrimination, and unequal access based on birth, then yes, those can be reduced dramatically and potentially even pushed to the margins of the society. History shows that many entrance systems that once people and society thought were permanent, like aristocratic privilege in Europe, legal segregation in the United States, untouchability in many, many parts of India, have weakened substantially over time. If caste, again, means identity or ancestry, then complete annihilation is much harder. Human beings tend to organize themselves into groups based on family, ethnicity, religion, language, things like that. Even when hierarchy fades, identity often remains anchored. So, the strongest argument is from my side that caste reproduces itself through marriage. And as long as most people choose spouses within their caste, the boundaries that come with caste, and these things will be procreated, recreated generation after generation. And now that's not to say that one should or should not marry within their boundaries of caste. It's just a perspective. So anybody can counter me on that as well. So I think that was to add a little bit of nuance on what we're denoting when we say caste as a term. So I see Mahadev raising his hand. Please go ahead. Mahadev, I said you can go ahead.
Okay. So I agree with these things. Caste cannot be annihilated from the Indian society because the formation of society, the four pillars, like in my personal, as I'm sharing personal thoughts. The structuring of society has been done using these four varnas, and over a course of time, as we evolved from this ages, medieval age and ancient age and kingdoms and till modernization, it has been haunting us. The main reason for it is the organization, the proper organizational balance in the workflow to happen for that cash has become necessary. Uh, Yet, if we take the contemporary measures of how it can be annihilated or how it can be leveraged better in order to increase the contemporary society and its mod bridge the gap between the modernity and the rural landscape livelihoods. So, if we mean caste is a rigid or hereditary system of social hierarchy, uh, it can be abolished, but it has intruded into this law, urbanization, marriages, education, and all other economic relations. So for the annihilation of caste, if we take that as one subject, we need to slowly identify where this caste is misused and discrimination is misused and leading to disastrous circumstances like we see in daily newspapers. So we need to identify the main main pinpoint where this is getting misused using the existing technology, and we need to socialize with the more people in rural hood. We in the sense the volunteers of the youth who wants to uh, make the best leverage the caste in the societal structure. So in rural landscape, if in urban politics, in metropolitan cities, it doesn't matter because we are quite occupied with other chores and household chores and work life balance and work life choice and everything. But if we go to rural landscape or not rural, even tied to cities, the discrimination is huge and it has more impact on the political scenarios, which directly impacts the case studies in their future for 1 to 2 years in elections and everything. So legal abolition is not possible. Only thing we can do is we, as a unit, forming a few societies and trying to slowly optimize the systems that are established using caste. Optimize in the sense, try to generalize the things, modernize the things in a cultural way that gets the acceptance of everyone, like abolishing untouchability has happened legally using in 1950s, and so many sociologists also tried to uh, optimize this socially and culturally using some reforms. Yes, really, we can also try out religious and ideological routes to annihilate. But the main point I would like to state is caste is needed for a society to function. But in what way? How can we utilize it constructively? That depends on how we leverage it to the best. So to leverage it to the best, we need to find which caste has the authority to stay and which can be abolished. So if we make some minimum caste identities and try to put them in the four pillars of democracy, press, judiciary, executionary, and legislature, and try to work together hand in hand. So different castes in the sense people from different castes. That doesn't mean the identity in metropolitan cities, but if you take in the rural landscape, uh, that this makes sense somehow. So this is my view. Please feel free to share anything. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mahadev. I will now let Anand go ahead.
Yeah, see, Mahade, you have mentioned that the system has trapped us like this, like it's not changeable legally. First of all, I must say that this is the system which trapped us all in the system of caste. Even in the previous history, if you're taking, if you're trying to look into the history, we can see they made this caste system in order to keep the workers as their hereditary jobs or like inherital jobs. For example, the based on the caste system, they wanted the workers similar to the modern education system back then. The before the Britishers, we had the caste system just to make sure that there were enough workers to do the job. And even after the independence of India, this is still continuing. That's not because our fault. I mean, it's the fault of the system which forced all of us to even right now discuss about the caste. I must say we all must feel ashamed to discuss about the caste system even in this year of 2026. We can see how technology has progressed in South Korea. If you're looking into South Korea, they don't consider religion. There is Buddhism and Christianism in South Korea, but still people don't consider themselves into any kind of religion. There is no religion in South Korea. Or even if there might be some kind of minority people, but still they don't consider them into any kind of religion in majority. Second of all, it's a system which has to change. For example, if we have seen about the when we are writing a JE exam or NEET exam, there will be some kind of consideration for the backward caste. But we have discussed it before that instead of the caste system, we should make it financial background. For example, if the person or if the student is actually financially backward, then we should consider them instead of the caste system. We should consider the finance into the topic instead of the caste. That's one other thing. I wanted to share something else. I forgot actually. So this is not something which we can't remove from the system. The modern generation have to consider ourselves, that we shouldn't be taking care of we shouldn't be concerned about the caste system. For example, if I am talking with Mahadev or Rose or someone else in this chat, if I'm asking your name, why should I be bothered about the caste? Or for example, I'll share an example. When I was visiting Nagpur, my native is Kerala. I am from Kerala, and when I visited Nagpur, I went along with my friend. I had to enter into a park. At that time, the security guard was asking my name. I said like my name is like Anand. He was asking me what's the full name. मतलब मेरा बाप का नाम क्या है और मेरा what's the name of my family name, because I was really astonished to hear such a thing from the people. Because people in my area, they never ask my tail name or something like that. So based on my religion or the caste, I am having some kind of a special consideration. That's what I am understand. I was so shocked to hear that. So such kind of system should be breaked, and we shouldn't allow these things to happen again, because this is affecting our nation. This is the mindset of the people which we have to change. This is not just a system. The mindset of the people of India should be changed, else there won't be any kind of progress. There won't be any kind of progress within the life of people in India, within the mindset of people of India. This is a really a breaker for the progress in India. That's the only thing which I want to say. We have to change ourselves, within ourselves. We have to change our mindset first.
Thank you, Anand. I will now let Smriti Ranjan go ahead. Hi, are you there? All right, we can just give him the next slot. Venkat, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So the topic of the debate is it possible to annihilate caste, or can caste be annihilated? First, I have to say that I have read two books by Ambedkar. I actually consider myself a student of Ambedkar. I've read his most famous book, The Annihilation of Caste, as well as another book on the origin of untouchability. So I've learned whatever I could on this subject from arguably India's foremost expert on the subject. So my conclusion is actually quite pretty much the same as everyone else's conclusion, that it is not possible to annihilate caste. Uh, in general, if you look at historical examples of other systems of injustice, I mean, what is caste? It is a power structure. It is also a system whereby injustice is systematically inflicted on certain groups. That is what caste has been historically, and still continues to be in many cases. If you look at other historical examples like slavery or colonialism, they were very well defined power structures which were held together either by conquest or by laws. And so, once the armies were withdrawn, and once the laws were dismantled, those systems automatically died as well. Right? So that is not the case with caste. It is not held together by any system of laws. In fact, whatever laws we have on the books are designed to oppose caste. Uh, Caste is a voluntary self-segregation of communities. So in a sense, even though we really hate to admit it, it is what the people want. And in a democracy, it is very, very difficult to enforce something that the people don't want to let go of. As long as people want caste, as long as people self-segregate themselves into castes, the system unfortunately is going to remain. So we have to aim for somewhat lesser goals. I think two of the speakers said that it is sufficient to mitigate the worst evils of the caste system, like untouchability and social injustice, denial of opportunities, and so on. If we can accomplish some of those goals, then I think we may have achieved all that is possible to achieve, given India's reality. So my conclusion is that it is not possible to annihilate caste, but it is possible to annihilate the worst aspects of caste. And I'll conclude by adding to Anand's experience, his anecdote about Nagpur. I've had a worse experience. I actually, when I went to the Krishna temple in Dwarka in Gujarat, one of the priests there actually asked me my caste. He asked me straight out to my face, "What is your caste?" That question took me aback. I wasn't prepared for it, so I blurted out my caste. By the time the next person came along, and I was prepared. So about 10, 15 minutes later, another priest came up to me and said, and asked me the same question. And this time I refused. I told him, I'm not going to tell you my caste, and I don't know why you're asking that question. Unfortunately, the system persists. And, it is very sad. And to some extent, we should be ashamed of it. I don't know to what extent. You see, we didn't create the system, right? We inherited the system. So I don't know to what extent we should be ashamed of it. But I do feel ashamed when I think about it. When I think of all the evils that India has inherited due to the system, I do feel ashamed. So I will stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Venkat. I will now let Smriti Ranjan go ahead if he's available to talk.
Hello. Yeah, sorry for the technical glitch last time. So yeah, from my side, few point like so yeah, the caste system it actually started from Varna. Like from the Vedic time, we have it like from like Brahmin, Kshatriya, the Vaishya, Shudra. Those represent like it is there, it was there, it is there, and it will be there. Till the time of humanity there because of the speciality in which the people are divided, like some are good in knowledge and wisdom, some are good in leadership, some in commerce and business, some in service. But the thing is that that has been changed to jati system. Instead of like karma based, it has been changed to birth based system, uh, and due to some political reason or something which got inherited and like continued through the like social practices like marriage and all. I think that could have been due to the identity crisis because some people might have failed in their like leadership role or commerce and still like us, though we are in like born into different varna, but still we all are in the Sudra currently. We like most of us in service sector and few in some commerce or leadership role. Yeah, so we have to. Uh, the solution, I believe, is like we cannot change it overnight because of the high level of politics involved and even the legal system. Though it was done to reduce discrimination, I think it has enabling the discrimination in everywhere because of that extra rights they are getting in every sector. And yeah, I think we have to change this. We have to have two like caste. Everyone should identify themselves like this by birth or that can reduce by or this by karma. I am Sudra by karma or like service sector by karma. Then only like everyone will be in the same place. Like the intercaste will be there in the service sector. Like currently also the same thing is happening. Like if someone is at the good leadership role, their marriage happen in that level. So in service sector also, whoever are in the current Shudra based upon the karma, it should be allowed. And like similar system can be done. So no like political or this legal framework can do this. There has to be movement like from people identify like from the self to family to society level to do these changes. Yeah, I think that's all from my side.
Sure. Thank you, Smriti Ranjan. And next up is Kishan. Kishan, are you there?
One second, one second. Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you're good to go.
Yeah. So on this particular topic, I just have to like what I've heard till now. It's like a lot of perspectives, lots of pointers, and lots of misinformation, and a lot of narratives targeting a certain sect of the society. So let's just be realistic here. Caste does not exist because of a political system or a political party. Caste does not exist because of Varna system. Caste exists because specifically after independence, where people are celebrating the book called as democracy, people are celebrating personalities like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. But caste only exists because society is getting incentivized to be in a caste. Okay, so it's true that we had Varna system. It's true that there was a Jati system. But we have, in the modern day, when we are talking about Varna and Jati, we clearly do not know what the hell it was. Some misconstrued narrative, some book, someone made a narrative and we are just following that blindly without even questioning or going to the source. Varna system was based on work, based on class, based on the character of the person, and the jati was necessary to identify a person's bloodline, which was completely a scientific process. Because even today, if you talk about the bloodline identification, you know that two bloodlines cannot be married together, or same blood group should not have kids together, because there are DNA implications. And if you want, this is not a hypothesis, you can go and check in Andhra. There is a current situation in Andhra where an entire DNA has disappeared because that entire community has been marrying within their community. Okay, this problem cannot be solved today or ever by just choosing a bride from other caste. As simple as that, because we are not going to choose a partner just because some person is feeling left out behind. Even I have a daughter, I'll find a groom for her, right? Only if the thought matches, not because I have to prove a point. Even if I'm from an upper caste or a lower caste, everyone does that. Just because a chief justice or a judge is sitting in front of a media and saying statements like Brahman should give their daughters, sir, with that kind of a useless mindset, no one is going to give your son any daughter. If that is your mindset. In modern day, we are struggling, marriage problems are happening. Just the major cause is mindset adjustment. So blaming an entire system which actually existed thousands of years with a purpose, with a scientific approach, and then victimizing or playing the rural card, or basically even in the cities. So I heard a lot of models of Dravidianism, or in north some temple. These are the same, these are the realities which is occurring when a political party or a person who holds that Dravidian model says that Sanatan Dharma should be annihilated. And the same person goes to a temple every day morning, every day there is a puja happening in his own house. So this is all misinformation. If you really want this problem to be solved, the only solution will start from the society, when the society will stop seeing the caste system as a incentive, because today it is incentivized. You can get 22% reservation and get into IIT, you won't be able to survive. That is what we are seeing. You won't be able to survive that, because the person coming with intellect who has scored 400 or on 500, a person who has scored 300 on 500, obviously there is a difference in the intellect, and that has nothing to do with caste. There are people from the backward caste who have scored way better. What is the difference? Like, what purpose does it serve? So unless you do not remove the incentive of reservation, we can keep debating, we can keep talking, nothing is going to happen. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Kishan. Bharat, please go ahead.
Yeah. Um, I just realized I didn't give my opinion on the topic debate. The topic of the debate, which is whether caste can be annihilated. I believe so. I'm an optimist, and I believe caste can be annihilated, even though we might not be living. I don't think I personally will be there to see it happen. But if we go ahead in the correct, go ahead in the correct way, I think that can happen in the future. So that is my opinion on the topic debate. The second thing is caste versus caste discrimination, right? I think Rose, you brought it up. Should we annihilate caste discrimination alone, or should we annihilate the caste system itself, right? My opinion on based on my readings is that you can't just annihilate caste discrimination. If you have caste, you are going to have caste discrimination, is my opinion. Because what are caste, right? Caste are basically groups the divisions that you're creating in your society. And caste by nature itself is hierarchical, right? There is going to be an upper caste, there is going to be a lower caste. So as long as that system is there, maybe the forms of discrimination might get a bit more lenient, but the discrimination is always going to be there. And the bigger problem that I see is that fraternity. So Ambedkar, keeps pointing out that for a nation to be an actual nation, you need liberty, equality, and fraternity, right? So liberty and equality, maybe you can get it, right? But fraternity is something you can't get unless you have the caste system. So fraternity is basically thinking of everybody in the society as your brothers and sisters, right? So that's what the word fraternity means. Until people are divided by caste, there is always going to be me versus them mentality, right? So you are going to be associated yourself with your caste more than how you would see someone from another caste, right? And especially if you go to a village, you can immediately sense, like, you don't even have to ask their caste, right? You can immediately sense who's upper caste, who's lower caste based on where they are living, and how they behave with each other. So it's that visible when you go to a village, right? And people belonging to the same village actually live together. Like caste, people belonging to the same caste actually live together in a village, right? So that's going to only a newborn child, right? Everybody's human. Newborn child who's going to grow up in that scenario is automatically going to be associated with their caste because they are blood and relatives of yours, right? So, so this fraternity building is what is actually very important, and that's what is going to help us form a healthy democracy. And today, definitely, caste is a huge problem politically because it is actually impeding our progress a lot, right? So that's why I feel caste needs to be abolished. Then there was talk about political parties, right? I definitely don't agree that political parties are the one that are creating caste or reservations for that matter, but we can come to that later. It is definitely a structure of the society, and that needs to change. Political parties are just going to use it for their advantage. But even if you, let's say tomorrow you move away from a democracy, you bring a monarch, caste system is not going to go away, right? So it is not that political parties are creating caste, it's just that they are leveraging caste for their benefit, right? So that's why I think political parties can never bring reform, right? If a political party goes tomorrow and say, hey, I'm going to abolish all caste, nobody is going to vote for them. They're not going to be electorally viable, right? So that's why it needs to be a social reform from a non-political organization is the only possibility, which will take time. It needs a lot of resources, which they're not going to get. So it will take time. But social reform is definitely the way, right? Where you educate people about all how caste divides the society and things like that, right? And then coming to industrialization and metropolitan cities, yes, it is true that industrialization has at least lenienized the caste discrimination, because we can't afford to discriminate by caste because our livelihood depends on it. Like, we are going to work in corporates, we can't afford to say, hey, I won't work with someone because they are from a lower caste, right? Because our livelihood and money making things depend on that. So obviously it is going to be reduced, right? But at the same time, I think even then, this intermarriage is still a problem, even in metropolitan cities, right? So that's where maybe I'll finish up, maybe take 30 more seconds. So intermarriage, right? What are the problems? Why marriages between castes is not happening? So marriages between castes will only happen when people are of the same economical and educational background, right? Like when you fall in love with someone, you will never fall in someone who's economically very high than you or economically very low than you, right? And educationally, they're very high than you or educationally very low on you. That's not going to naturally happen. So only when people from different caste, from higher caste and lower caste, come to the same economical and educational background, then only the chance of intermarriage can even happen, right? And for that exact reason is why we have reservations, and definitely it should be a short-term thing. But unfortunately, we are still not there. And thank you. I think I ran over my time. Thanks.
Thank you, Bharat. So after hearing everybody speak a little bit about things that revolve around caste, for example, we talked about reservations, we have talked about ancestry, and we have talked about based identity. We talked about the role of caste in politics. There are certain things that I would like to address just to create more room for you guys to think. So the first thing will be, can we separate identity and hierarchy? Because when we're talking about caste, right, caste or community, I'll be using the two interchangeably throughout the session. So identity in my mind looks something like, I belong to community X, right? Whereas on the other hand, hierarchy looks something like, my community X is superior or inferior to community Y, right? So the question here is, can hierarchy disappear while the identity still remains, right? And then, since somebody was talking about what incentivizes caste and why it is still so deep rooted in Indian society, right? So, caste today, very, very truly in reality, influences things like marriage politics, reservations, community networks, electoral blocks, and whatnot, right? So, the question is, if these were to disappear tomorrow, would the current caste system survive? Right? So, now this kind of shifts the thinking from what causes it, right, to what is sustaining it, right? And then talking about Ambedkar, right? So B.R. Ambedkar's primary point, primary argument, if you will, was not about discrimination, it was endogamy, right? So we're talking about something of this thought process. If 90 to 95% of marriages remain within caste, can caste really disappear, right? So whether you think it can be annihilated or whether you think otherwise, it does not matter. This question is very pertinent to both sides. And then we have historically looked at certain institutions or practices that once upon a time looked eternal, right? Slavery, feudalism, aristocracy, colonial empires, legal segregations, and whatnot. So, what is making caste system different from these? All right. And then we are talking about ancestry and ethnicity. So even if, let's say, the caste hierarchy disappears, will people still retain the caste ancestry the way people retain their ethnic ancestry? Right? Because if you're looking at a country like US where so many ethnicities live as the migrated population or US citizens, we look at these people very boldly claiming their ethnicity, right? Their ethnic ancestry, despite living in a country like the United States. So even if you are a US national, you will see that US national patriotism along with the ethnic and ancestry that they keep so close to themselves. And apart from that, since we talked about the rural urban divide when it comes to how strong of a hold that caste system has, we can discuss, is urbanization weakening it or is it strengthening it under a guise? And then the reservation. It's sort of a paradox, and this we can go back and forth on. So we can discuss whether reservation actually helps annihilate caste by correcting the inequality that existed and to a certain level still exists, or is it still keeping caste relevant to this day by requiring caste categories by law? All right. Now, all those questions aside, to summarize them, I'd like for you guys to think about this. If we imagine India in 2126, right? Can we imagine a country where people marry freely across castes and caste no longer predicts income, education, or status, and caste based discrimination is rare? But people still know and proudly claim their ancestry. So, by answering all these questions, I would then like you to answer, can caste truly be annihilated even 100 years down the line? So, next up are Venkat and Kishore in that order. And after those two are done, we will opening the floor for rebuttals. Please go ahead, Venkat.
So again, one of the main mechanism that Dr. Ambedkar identified for the annihilation of caste is large-scale intermarriage. He was very clear in his book that only large-scale intermarriage between castes can annihilate the institution. So, if that's the case, I don't know whether he's right, but if assuming that he is right, that is a very impractical solution for the simple reason that the institution has existed for thousands of years, and very deep differences have built up, between the castes. Members of the same caste can identify each other, at a glance. A few words here and there, appearance, they can identify each other, and large-scale intermarriage across castes is simply impractical. I don't think it's going to happen. Um, Also that sort of thing has not happened anywhere in the world because the caste system is also an indicator of education, is also an indicator of class distinctions. Large scale intermarriage across education levels, across income levels, has not happened anywhere in the world, and it's impractical to think that it will happen in India. So we cannot look to that to annihilate caste. So once again, I think a more practical goal, a more achievable goal, is to look to annihilate caste-based discrimination rather than caste itself. Uh, so the other point that was made that the caste system exists simply because it's incentivized to exist today due to reservations and so on. That's a laughable point. It has existed for thousands of years. Reservations is from independence. It's only 70, 75 years old. But the caste system has existed for thousands of years. So what was the incentive 300 years ago, 600 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago? That notion absolutely makes no sense, except that I do understand emotionally where that reaction is coming from. The upper caste in India have been at the receiving end of this, and many meritorious students from the upper caste, have not been able to secure admissions in colleges of their choice. They believe it's because of reservations, right? Perhaps. These are highly debatable points, but there is no doubt that there is a deep sense of resentment among a lot of people belonging to upper caste. Uh, well, I shouldn't say upper caste. That's a long term. Let me withdraw that. I will replace it by saying the people who are not eligible for reservations. A lot of people in the general category feel a deep sense of resentment about reservations, and so they may equate the persistence of the caste system. They may attribute the persistence of the caste system to the existence of reservations. But the fact of the matter is that caste has been the most persistent, with no exceptions, the most persistent feature of Indian society for thousands of years. it is not a system of incentives that is sustaining it. It is merely the fact that it has existed. It has almost always existed. We don't know, there is no well documented phase of Indian history where caste did not exist, right? And once again, Ambedkar emphasizes repeatedly that custom and tradition have far more force among Hindus than laws. He makes this point very emphatically, and I agree with it. Laws are new, especially the post-independence laws. Even the British era colonial laws are relatively new in India compared to customs and traditions that have existed for thousands of years. And we don't need to look further than that. That is the reason that caste persists, because it has been the most persistent feature of Indian society. Thanks.
Thank you, Venkat. Kishan, you can go ahead.
So I would like to start with what Venkat has mentioned here. Venkat, I would request you to please read the Indian history properly. Okay. The existence of caste system came into presence after the Mauryan Empire. Okay. Specifically, when Buddhism started to go on a peak. Okay. And then people started the entire narrative of caste to protect themselves from the wild horse once upon a time called as Buddhism. Because Buddhism gave this fake narrative in the mindset of people that, see, even if you be a Hindu, right, you will always be on third or fourth position. Come to us. You'll be on top of the position. Just because you become a Buddhist, you will not be able to pronunciate the mantras, or you will not be able to ever learn the Vedic scripture the way they do, because that's an art, that's a skill that exists today itself. Okay, point number one. Point number two, please go and read the Indian history. Indian Vedic system always had a Varna system and a Jati system, which was scientifically based, not by birth. By birth happened once Buddhism went rogue and wild during the Mauryan Empire, promoted by Ashoka to protect themselves. The Brahmins of that particular time created the texture called as Manusmriti with the principles based out of the Persian history. Please read. Stop spreading misinformation and narratives just because you have read a couple of books of the modern history. And there is no resentment, my friend. There is no resentment. It's just that it feels bad that a country with full of potential, with youth, is stuck in a rut race where people are just day by day degrading themselves to get a benefit called as reservation. Yeah, there is no comparison. Trust me, there is literally no comparison. People of the upper caste have realized that, and they are utilizing the same system to game the system. The one who was suffering 50 years ago, right? They are still suffering. Akhilesh Yadav has a property worth of 80 crores. DK Shivkumar 1700 crores. And these are the people who call themselves as the socialist leader, and people blindly go and vote them on the basis of Lingayat or Vokalinga. The entire DMK family has an asset worth of more than 2,500 crores. And they are the people who preach Dravidianism where equality exists. Where is the equality? So you are saying there's no poverty in Tamil Nadu? There's no poverty in Andhra Pradesh? There's no poverty in UP? Sir, please stop spreading misinformation and narratives. It's not going to benefit the Indian society. You want the Indian society to be stuck in a loop and not be progressive because you are scared. The moment the Indian society progresses, you know what it has the potential to become. And you're scared of that. That's the reality. It's not an emotional outburst. That is the only practical, logical conclusion. And I don't think so Mr. B.R. Ambedkar ever understood what the hell was caste. He was an angry person who felt that he was being sidelined everywhere. So he decided to create his own political narrative for his own political benefit. Christianity doesn't have a caste. Islam doesn't have a caste. Who told you? As a matter of fact, entire Manusmriti is inspired. Please go fact check yourself. Entire Manusmriti is designed on the principles of Persian history, an Islamic nation. The entire system was designed by the priest of that time. You can blame the Brahmins, you can blame everyone. Society is not going to progress. Bihar is the biggest example of caste system. Yadavs. The Lalu family at this stage holds assets worth more than 3,500 crores. What happened to Yadavs? They should be the predominant, they should be the dominating society, right? Please, for God's sake, if you really care about this country and the people, and if you're a little bit intellectual, please stop spreading misinformation for your personal gain to make yourself feel better and show that you care. Because with narratives, you don't care about anyone else, just about yourself, just like any other politician. That's all.
Thank you, Kishan. Advaita, before I let you go ahead, can you please tell me whether this will be more of an opening statement and context building, or will it be a rebuttal?
It's going to be mainly context building. There were a lot of points, and the last speech was quite emotionally charged. I do not think I can properly rebuttal that accurately.
Right. So I'll give you 5, and after Adwaita, we will officially be heading into the rebuttal session. All right. Thank you. Go ahead.
I will, of course, be building on a few points. A lot of people have been asking about why caste is needed and what's sustaining it. I say caste, and comparing it to say colonialism. We've already established that caste shouldn't be compared to apartheid or colonialism. It's a pretty unique thing by itself, unique to India. But I disagree with one thing, and that's saying that the caste system was as bad as it was 50 years ago. I say that the hegemony of the upper caste system has definitely been broken. The role of caste in Indian society has really changed from what it was. Let's look at the evolution of caste system first. Previously, it was mentioned in the Varna system. I believe Smriti Anjan mentioned this. In the Rig Veda, the caste system was flexible. It was more of a way to categorize the various roles of a person in a society and was not rigid. Then, in the medieval era, it started to become based on your family line. As for why this discrimination happened, Ambedkar argues that the reason it still exists today is because the Vedas and various scriptures talk about it as if it's a religious responsibility and a fundamental rule. I say that just like every nature of discrimination, it's for accommodating power. And even today, this is the case. It's always for accommodating power. During the colonial era, this became much worse and the caste system was again changed. I'd say that the Britishers actually used the caste system to cause divide amongst the Indian people. Because at this point, everyone is a second class citizen or becoming a second class citizen. It's better to make people fight against each other and step over each other than allow them to unionize and fight against the larger power. The Britishers knew this and worked the caste system as a tool for this. How each state handled caste, I feel like this isn't addressed enough, was quite unique as well. Caste has never ever been a monolith that's the same enforced everywhere. Like in the northeast, it's mainly tribal communities, so it's barely relevant. In West Bengal has been ruled by left politics for decades. In fact, it's mainly class politics over there. In North India, UP and Bihar, the mandal politics of the 90s has shifted the hands of power. So now the Yadavs and all, they are benefiting from OBC, from reservations. So the hands of power have shifted. It's not just upper caste people reaping the benefits. There are still people being oppressed, but you can't say that it's the same as it was decades ago. And if you look at South India, in wait, I forgot the exact name. Yes, Sri Narayan Guru and Periyar have both led incredible movements against casteism. In fact, I believe there are actually some upper caste people from traditionally upper caste families, who fought against casteism or were supporters of communism, weirdly enough, because they knew the importance of unionizing against, of getting people, of getting unionizing the people under a uniform identity to progress. In modern day, I'd say the role of caste has changed and it is on its way to elimination. Nowadays, the main ways I see caste in modern day is, at least in the metropolitan communities like Mumbai, is in hiring or networking opportunities, job opportunities, really high level things like this. Privileged families had the access to education, they had a head start. So they had a head start on English education. They have most opportunities. And in like modern day networks such as IIT alumni networks, you see a lot of hegemony. But once again, reservations fight against this. Uh, yeah, sorry. One second. But one thing I disagree of is dismissing the work of freedom fighters like Ambedkar and so on as just angry or stupid people who are insecure. I say this is a huge generalization and actually spreading misinformation. These people were leaders in creating the India we know today, and in India we don't appreciate enough. The worst personal experiences I've heard from everyone here is maybe a security man asking for your last name. Otherwise, previously, it could be as bad as being beaten in front of people or not even being allowed to sit on the classroom. I remember one friend of mine talked about people of a lower caste not even being allowed to sit on school tables. They were forced to sit on the floor. I say we've progressed very, very, very far from what we have come, and that the main role caste fulfills today of politics, of vote banks, even this is being replaced by things like religion, of migrants, of national identity. Caste is becoming irrelevant, and I say it can be dissolved and is well on its way to transforming into something totally different. Thank you. Sorry for stepping over my time.
Thank you, Advaita. We will now be taking counters and rebuttals. Bharat, please go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there are multiple things that I wanted to share about. One thing I think it was Venkat who was talking about how intermarriage feels like an improbable solution. I agree. Like even if we pass a law tomorrow that's saying nobody can marry within a caste, that's just not going to happen, right? People are going to revolt against it, right? And why it doesn't happen naturally as well is because there are many reasons, but one of the reasons is again somebody you like everybody who falls in love with another person usually falls in love only within people who are within their own economic background or similar to their economic background and similar to their educational background, right? And that is what is happening today, right? We are trying to bring all the castes to the same economic and educational background, and that's where reservations are helping. I also disagree with Kishan saying that reservation is not helping anyone. I know many families who have, uh, over the course of 2 to 3 generations, have socially mobilized upward due to reservations, and also the and once that's happened, right? Once every caste comes to the same economic educational background, then it's a more fertile ground for inter-caste marriages to happen. And that is what Ambedkar also says. Two things he says. One, he should be opposing all the rituals and shastras, because even if you do intercaste marriages, what usually happens is higher caste, let's say a higher caste boy marries a lower caste girl. The lower caste girl is to kind of transform into the higher caste, right? That's how they view it. And that's why the opposite is what causes a lot of problem, where a lower caste a boy marries a higher caste girl, which is the cause of major problems here, right? So this kinds of adopting the higher caste practice needs to be avoided, and for that you need to reject the shastras. Is basically his point. So not just intermarriage, you need to reject the shastras, and you need to also make sure that everybody from every caste comes to the same education and economical background, and this is where reservation help. I think again, reservation is not it's not a financial thing. The problem is even if you're financially well off, the educational background and the economic background, especially the educational background of your family matters. If you are a family where you have two IAS officers, two engineers, two doctors, you are going to be, well adapted to or well posed to become an engineer yourself or a doctor But let's say you are coming from a family who are not very academically inclined, who let's say do a lot of business where you still get a decent amount of money, but the educational aspirations are not there in your relatives or in your close relatives, then obviously as you grow up in that environment, you are also not going to be educationally inclined, right? So that's where reservations come in. Reservation is for social background and not for financial background. And people within the same caste usually have been in the same social and educational background. And that's what we are trying to solve. Third, sorry, I'll quickly do this. Just give me 10 minutes. I just want to address this point of politicians like Lalu Prasad Yadav, DMK, Akhilesh Yadav, people earning a lot. So that is politics. I would say this happens to every political family. But what happened in UP and Bihar, and especially UP, where the Yadav movement took place, initially I think it was inspired by Lohia, who actually wanted it to be an anti-caste movement, right? But as I said, when you move politically, you kind of become a caste movement, right? And since Yadavs were a majority, they were able to flex the muscle politically. But the policies that they brought in, like reservations and everything, benefited all OBCs, right? And then after Kanshiram and Mayawati in Bihar, I think then it happened, it benefited SCs and STs more, right? But the point is, even though that particular political family, and same with DMK as well in Tamil Nadu, even though the particular political family benefited and the political class that became benefited, the policies that they brought in for education and reservation, not just reservations, right? There are a lot of educational policies that brought in that made it easier for people from this class to kind of achieve the next level. It did happen. But politically, if you see in UP and Bihar, or at least in UP, the Yadavs occupied. The other OBCs like Kurmis were neglected, right? And that is something, a problem that happens with caste movements, right? And same with Dravidian. Once it entered politics, it became a OBC party. It was supposed to be OBC, SC, ST, a Tamil party, right? But it never happened. It became a OBC party. Even today, if you see, majority of the power is held by OBC, and SCs now have their own political movements to kind of regain their power, right? So that is a different issue. But what nobody can deny is the social upliftment that these movements brought in respective states is something that cannot be approved. And once to the and also final point on the origin of caste, I don't want to go into that rabbit hole. It's a huge discussion on its own. But one thing I wanted to tell to Kishan is when he said Mauryan Empire is when the caste system got more systemized, and that's when Manusmriti came to, right? And Manusmriti came around 200 AD to 200 BC, right? That's the dating that we have. So if you look at 200 BC, that is still 1800 years ago, right? So still a long amount of time that caste, even if that's where caste is synthesized. Actually, I would say caste synthesized in various places in India at various times. In South, it was the latest, but it all happened between 200 BC to 800 BC because we have people of other, Chinese monks, people from Europe actually attributing caste and recording caste in our history. So even if you take that, it's still 1,000 years ago. Even if you take like 800 AD, it's still 1,200 years before. So I would agree with Venkat there that caste has been there for a long time, and removing reservations, removing democracy, putting a monarch rule, nothing is going to remove because that is a power structure. Caste is a power structure.
Bharat, I'll let you go ahead once again. Sum up for
Sorry.
now.
Yeah, I'm done now. Thanks.
Right. Thank you, Kishan. Please go ahead.
So, starting with Bharat, my friend, the fact of the matter is, even mathematics existed thousands of years ago. Okay, but it doesn't mean that everyone is Aryabhatta in this particular country. Okay, see, you really have to understand, man. See, like I don't even know how to respond to what you have mentioned that caste existed so 1800 years ago. So why today? For your kind information, Bharat, the entire Bhakti movement against the caste, against the Brahmins, it started from South. If you remember, the people who are holding that entire baton that we are from South and we are so evolved that it doesn't exist in the Dravidian society ever. I'm like, it's laughable. The entire movement started from southern part of the country, specifically after we all know that the foreign intervention into the society started first from the south, starting from Kochi, then going to the Tamil side, and then to the Maharashtra, and it has gone from down to up, not from up to down. For your kind information, the interesting part is, as J. Sai Deepak said, with all the pointers that I have heard here, you can't fight the enemy outside. So what you're doing is you're creating an enemy within. ठीक है? Brahmins are your enemies. They are taking things from you. Sir, for your kind information, let me just rationalize this with one particular simple thought. AI is accessible to all. Okay? Even a lot of government benefits are being given to students, right? This all debate in next 5 years, right? All these pointers, people who are saying that educational equality and financial equality will enable intercaste marriage, it will never happen, Bharat. It will never happen. Let me promise you that. You know why? Because even though, say, a person with the mindset of Bharat, right, is at 2000 crore asset and graduated from Harvard, but the mindset is of what you mentioned, right? Trust me, no one will give you the daughter. You know why? Because my daughter will be butchered in that particular house. With that said, finally, what I'm going to say is you can spread the misinformation. Eventually, the information will come up. And as Advaita was talking about Mr. Ambedkar, yes, Mr. Ambedkar was an angry man. Please read his life. He was an angry man. Eventually, even he came and said that, by the way, Advaita, reservation was for 10 years, according to Mr. Ambedkar. Why does it still exist? Why did Ambedkar fail to basically remove that after 10 years?
Wait, it was supposed to be for 10 years. Could you tell me where exactly you read this? I don't think I found it anywhere.
Please read.
Yeah,
Please read.
so give me your
A
source so
political.
I can read.
It's a political.
Let's not
You can
interrupt each
Google,
other. Anyway,
Advaita.
Kishan, your time is
Advaita,
up.
you can Google. You can Google. Literally, you can Google. For 10 years, that
Kishan, you
entire
can go.
policy
You
was
can.
made.
Kishan, you can continue next round. Right, it's Bharat and Advaita. Are you also next in line to speak since you were responding to something that he was saying?
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to clarify for the source so I could quickly read up on it in time for the rebuttal. I'll speak
Right,
after Bharat.
Kishan, you can put the source in the chat or something for people's reference. And Bharat, yeah, please go ahead.
Sorry, I'll just finish this, Advaita. One thing, right? I just want to revert to what Kishan was saying. Yeah, 200 AD was Manusmriti. If you read Manusmriti, that's like the worst form of casteism. Luckily, even people today do not follow those things. So yes, it did exist in its worst form in 200 AD. And again, Manusmriti is not a Bible. It was not something that was written and then followed. Manusmriti was a codification of the existing laws, right? So in 200 AD, Manusmriti was written. And and to your point on Bhakti movement, I think you are just actually making my point easier. Bhakti movement started on 800 AD. Okay, 800 AD is when even South had caste system caste and all the practices came in. And Bhakti movement, yes, was against it, but it was again in 800 AD. So my timeline still checks out. So I don't understand what exactly your point was there. So Bhakti movement, yes, it was started against caste, but I would say looking at today, it has failed. But at 800 AD, it did come against caste, but which means that caste system was a problem even at 800 AD, which was my original point as well, which is still 1200 years ago, right? And this whole point of South, I don't claim South people are superior or anything like that. It's just a way of how history happened, and it's the way of geography, the way this policy of casteism and this basically this understanding of separating people by birth definitely started in the north and it spread through the south, and that's clearly historically documented everywhere. Even though there were other forms of discrimination in south as well. For example, there was discrimination. There was a kind of untouchability in the south as well against people who work with leather and things like that. But this is something that existed everywhere. It existed in Japan. It existed but it was not religiously authorized like how it happened later, right? So there was other forms of discrimination in South, and I mean, who are we kidding? People living in 200 AD, whether they're in South or North, they're not going to be very. It's not going to be a very egalitarian society. I disagree with that as well. Many people claim Tamil society or any Southern society was egalitarian back then. I don't think so. It's just not possible to happen. But at the same time, this rigid form practices where religiously people are being separated at birth happened from north to south. That's one thing. I forgot the last thing that I wanted to say. Yeah, I think maybe my time is also over. I don't remember the last point you mentioned. But anyway, this is what I wanted to give a rebuttal to. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Bharat. Advaita, please go ahead.
Yeah. I likely be short. I don't think I'll take more than 5 minutes. I just wanted to address the points that Kishan Kishore brought up. So I checked that factoid about caste reservation meaning to be abolished after 10 years. It turns out that it's not meant to be ended. It's merely meant to be reviewed every decade. From the global Ambedkarites.org, it is said that after the constitution came into force, the ruling class and opposition deliberately spread the misconception that reservation in employment and education was only for 10 years, and that this is a sheer lie, quoting the article. I just wanted to argue against his point, saying that yes, maybe Ambedkar was an angry man, but I don't think that that his achievements should be dismissed, or that any of the various freedom fighters that have created our society should be dismissed. These people were the face, Ambedkar specifically, was the face of a movement who reformed our society and abolished the caste system, or did his best to do so at the time. He is instrumental in implementing these rights and reservations for the suppressed castes of India. He's instrumental in that. And I also understand that there are a lot of opinions and a lot of emotions flying around, but I don't think we should just insult or call someone a selfish politician, even if they are spreading misinformation. But yeah, those are still valid points. There are some people who claim that their culture never had casteism because of their development and all. That point I do agree with, and it is false and spreading of misinformation when they claim, for example, certain South Indians claim that their societies are much more advanced. I agree. That yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to rebuttal that point. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Advaita. Kishan, you can go ahead.
Very interesting that the moment someone is speaking facts or rebutting any particular point on merit is termed as emotional, and just because someone is speaking very calmly, right? So the person is ultimately a logical person. I mean,
I am not calling you illogical, just clarifying that.
no, Advaita, please, you should wait for your turn. You are getting emotional. Come on, a lot of emotions flying here. As you mentioned.
No personal attacks. Anytime
Yes.
anybody is countering somebody, I would like you to counter the point and not attack anybody personally. Thank you.
Exactly. So the point here is that uh, it's a strategy which usually happens in a certain set of political ideologies, that a person speaking calmly would be thinking that the other person is, a lot of emotions are flying and the person is getting emotional. Yeah, it is emotional. Let me be very frank and very clear and straightforward about it. It is emotional. My country is getting impacted. People of this country are getting impacted. It is not just a debate for me to sip with a wine. Okay, it's not just a debate. People of this country are actually suffering because of a nonsense rhetorical utopian thought process which some person sitting in his room studying in London and then coming back and calling himself as a freedom fighter, when the people who lied their life for this particular country are completely disregarded. So yeah, it is emotional. We talk about countries like US and China, but we have a zero definition of Indianness within us. So first, let's bring that point number one. Point number two, as Bharat mentioned about entire thought process of proving a point, sir, your point is not getting proved. I am just stating what you have mentioned in the correct order. So the entire system of thought process which we have, that okay, this happened here in UP, this happened in Bihar, this happened, my friend, it is there in every state in the same form, and it all existed just because of a document called as you mentioned, right, in your own terms, that varnas existed, and using those varna manusmriti was codified. Same way, a document called as social structures of caste system existed, and a document called as Constitution of India just codified it to ensure that this country never progresses, so that people are in that rabbit hole throughout their lifetimes, not just for a year. And the day you will realize, by the time this will be too late. Okay, that's all I have to say. With that, I'll conclude.
Thanks, Kishan. Bharat, you can go ahead. Advaita, you can follow.
Yeah. So again, I don't think I still don't understand how you have refuted my point. See, my point was caste system in its worst form was at least 1200 years old. For that, you mentioned Bhakti movement started in 800 AD, which again only clarify or only supports my argument that if it started at 800 AD against caste, then it means that it was at least 2200 years old that caste system was there. And 200 AD, Manusmriti was codified. And with respect to North South, again, my point is it's not like people from North were intellectually inferior or people from South were intellectually superior. It's just the way that the religion spread. The religion and the idea spread from North to South. And as you said today, it is more or less the same everywhere in India. Nobody can deny that. And so definitely nobody from South can claim that they're intellectually superior, because I mean, South people did accept it, right? So there is no reason why South people should claim that they're intellectually superior. That I also don't agree. And another thing that I remembered from your last time, which is on the British, right? So I would agree, Ambedkar was not a freedom fighter. I wouldn't classify Ambedkar as a freedom fighter. Ambedkar was a social reformer who fought for the rights of the socially backward. So not just Ambedkar, many other people were there, and they all used British as a leverage, right? So British kind of was like a middleman between the upper caste and the lower caste movement leaders. And British, they actually got many of their rights with British. If you see reservations was brought in, let's say in Tamil Nadu from 1920s, right? And that was done with the help of British, right? Because they could use British as a leverage. Now, what is the goal of British? Obviously, goal of the British is to plunder Indian society, right? Nobody is denying that. But these lower caste movement leaders were able to use British for their advantage to get their own rights, and I wouldn't blame them because it was really bad, right? The way lower caste were treated and the rights, everything was so bad. So the only place where they can upper caste was not willing to help, right? That's the upper caste leaders at least were not willing to help. So they used British as a leverage to do it, and this is a part of history of Indian colonial history that everybody should read, because it's not just Indians fighting against independence. There was other group who are trying to use British to improve their social conditions, which was, I would classify Ambedkar, Periyar, and other leaders under this category, right? So I would agree there, but again, I would say they are very right to do that because they are trying to improve the conditions.
Thank you, Bharat. I guess Advaita was in line. Anyway, I'll now let Smriti Ranjan go ahead, and if anybody wants to speak, you're welcome to keep your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. So I feel this is not a recent problem. Everyone, as you know, and this is not a like Britisher problem or any other. It is like, as we are telling, it is at least 1,000-year old problem, and all it started due to identity crisis occurred due to I, some sort of spiritual ambiguity, discontent when Hinduism at the what is that lowest stage, when Buddhism was doing everything. Even like Shankaracharya was in the false impression in Varanasi, who was like discriminating the Dalits, and Shiva himself showed like the scholar like son how it is same when it is there, like when Ganga and Jamuna is uniting and everything. So that is a story. So from that time it is there. I don't think any other historical what is that notion of the jati system I could not find, at least, but I could find all the reference during that time when the spiritual leadership was at the lowest stage, which Shankaracharya recovered, but still the bhakti movement and other movement could not impact uh, get away that identity crisis, who we are spiritually. We are still bound to till be around the all different pranta of, like, we are from Odisha, we are from all these things, but he himself started like we are from India. So first time as leader identified them as Indian. So similar identity crisis currently exist. Even the Dalits, they themselves, I don't think they are identifying as a Indian, I mean, as a Indian, but they are primarily recognizing them, or any like Brahmin or anyone. They are primarily recognized as their own caste system. I think there the problem lies. So we are not recognizing who we are, why we are here, what is our role in the society. Everyone is to serve the society, do the karma which are assigned by God to serve the community. Instead of that, we are fighting within us. We are superior. We should get the reservation. We should only protect our rights, and instead and don't do any of our duties for other people to do. This kind of system, like we are. If we continue like that, uh, if we don't recognize our dharma, it will be similar to other community which have like from what is that any other community which are vanished, like who are only focused on artha and kama. So we should recognize uh, uh, we should recognize our duty and dharma. Then only we can get rid of all this like social discrepancy, which was part of 1,000 year. It is not easier, but we should there should be not just a social movement, some spiritually, some what is that, which is a truth. That movement has to be also started. It can be done through any, not just Hinduism, any religion or any spiritual thought. But if we just introspect, we'll get to know our duty, and we'll identify ourselves correctly. Yeah, that's all.
Right. Thanks, Mutiranjan. So, the way I see it, we have some sort of middle ground. We believe as participants of the session that caste is something that's very deep rooted in Indian society. We have discussed historically how it has evolved and how it still continues to affect our lives. So, I think after hearing everyone else's arguments and counters, what I see is that most of us, if not all, believe that certain aspects of caste, like the identity that comes along with it, the cultural context, and things like that, that tie you to your roots using caste as the anchor, those are either really hard or almost impossible to cut out from one's life or from the society, the Indian society in general. However, the other things that we talk about, the more economic and political things, for example, access to opportunities or, curbing the inequality that still exists, that is something that can be annihilated with some really well researched and well implemented efforts. So, Saying that, you can now make your last counters, or you can just start with your closing statements. Yes, please, Kishan.
So my last point would be, I'm not sure if Bharat exists. Okay, Bharat is gone. So it was basically for Bharat that history is a very interesting subject. People usually choose the date what suits them. There is a civilization which has lasted and which has a written and documented history of 5,000 years, where it is mentioned that Varna exists based on person's character and the work he does. But still, people chooses a history and a date where it suits a narrative of 1800 years old. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. It tells a lot about a person's intent, what the person wants to push forward in the name of discussion and debate. We can clearly identify whether it's a discussion, debate, information, or if it is a narrative. That would my concluding statement.
Sure, Kishan. Thanks. Smriti Ranjan, that's your turn. Smriti Ranjan, are
Yeah,
you there?
yeah. Uh, yeah, I think I have already mentioned just now. But yeah, uh, on the closing statement, yeah, we should like first be like identify ourselves correctly, then let our family and community recognize wherever we do, we let them correct. And it is not a easier movement. There has to be a new movement on identity, so that people and progressively, like if you see, like now the only the caste system exists in certain spaces, but in city and all those other life we don't see or we don't identify that much. Only in rural area where the knowledge or this thing is there, not much. Only people identify themselves based upon their caste system as a superiority. There this exists, but in like modern, when when people are open, where they have more access to knowledge, it is bit like exceeding. So means what is that? Annihilating. But yeah, there has to be a progressive movement which needs what is that? Uh, needs to start from ourselves itself. Yeah, that's it.
All right. So, I think before letting you all give your concluding statements, I was mentioning that, the way I see it, certain things about the caste or caste system can be annihilated, and certain things cannot be, because they're so deep rooted not only in the society's frameworks but also in people's identity. So I think from my end that would be like the concluding statement as well. So thank you for being here, and I will see you next week, same day and same time. All right. Thank you guys. See you. Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Bye.